All right, here's another video in the series that is being made for CTK 460 for fall 2022. Though if you're watching this in the future and you're not in those classes, this should totally apply to anything that has the XR interaction toolkit in it in Unity. If you're following along in the series, the previous video was talking about just getting the interactables set up, and we ended up with the system where we had the Ray interactable where you could pull the objects to you, right? And they would kind of teleport seemingly instantaneously to your hand. And I mentioned that's probably really good for, maybe simulations or something, but maybe not so much like for a game, if you're trying to make a game, or something where you want it to feel slightly more immersive and immediate, like you're immediately kind of grabbing and touching objects in the world. To do that, you can use a kind of parallel interaction in the XR kit, which is called the direct interactable. And that's what this little video is going to show you how to set up. Just looking at the scene here, a couple of things are different. One, I changed the color of a few things. All I've done is added some materials here. And I talked about these in a previous video, and we'll do this in class if you aren't familiar with these. But that's really just coloring the object. It's super simple. The reason is I made a little table, because you'll see why. We'll have to be able to grab things. And they will be too low in my office to be able to grab them off the floor. And if you have a white cube on a white table with a white floor, it's like really hard in VR to see what you're looking at. So that's simply all the reason why they're there. I also cleaned up the shadows a bit. That was done just in project settings under quality here. And if you go down to the shadow distance, I was just lowering this down. I mentioned this in class as well. On the Monday class for sure, that you really don't need a tremendously long distance in VR for your shadows. And the shorter or smaller this is, the more crisp your shadows are going to appear, because Unity is only going to render them within about, in this case, 4 meters of your actual player. And if this gets too small, you'll see the shadow disappear, right? So somewhere between like 5 and 10 usually is fine for like a standard VR experience, though there are obviously reasons why you might want it to be bigger. Okay, so that's all I've done. So this just kind of make it a little appear a little bit cleaner and a little bit easier to look at. However, we want to set up this direct interactable to be able to grab objects. We actually have to change how this XR origin is set up. So what we're concerned with here is these two objects. This is the XR controller and the XR Ray interactor. This is that kind of like, I described it as the infinity gauntlet. It like zips right to your hand, right? We don't want this object. We actually don't want to do that. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that hard to switch. All we want to do is remove these from our XR rig. And to do that, you can either delete them and just hit delete, or you can simply just turn them off if you want and leave them there. There's advantages to both, right? If you delete it, you don't have to worry about it. But also, it's potentially advantageous, maybe in a VR experience, to be able to move between the two, right? Say at moments you want to be able to grab something, and then other moments, maybe something in the world changes and you want to be able to use the Ray interactors. This is one way to do that. You could keep these disabled, and then in some capacity in the app, like turn them on and off like this. Either way is fine. I'm going to just disable them just to have them here, but you can delete them if you want. And what we want to do is click on this camera offset, and we want to create a child of this camera offset in the same way that these two objects are children of the camera offset. They're kind of tucked underneath it, right? And to do that, we right-click on camera offset, and we're going to go down to XR, and we get our like menu of stuff, and we want to go to device-based. And instead of Ray interactor, which is what this defaulted to coming with, we want to use a direct interactor. And you right-click and let that go. And notice it's like hovering for you to name it. You want to immediately name this, right? So this is actually standing in for one of your hands, and we'll call this right hand, like that. And you can even like be more specific if you want, especially if we're going to, if you're going to save these, right? You're going to be able to move between them, like the Ray interactor and the direct interactor. You may want to call this right hand direct interactor, interactor. There you go. And that's your right hand. Notice over here where it says XR controller, device-based, where it says controller node, right hand. If you click on that, you're going to see a whole bunch of other stuff pop down. really for our purposes, the only thing that's important is if you're calling this right-hand direct interactor, that this says right hand. And then we want to make a left hand, right? So we'll go and we'll do that again. Right click, XR, device-based, direct interactor. And we'll call this left hand direct interactor. There you go. And then over here, we want to make sure we click left hand. It'll be associated with the hands correctly on your controller, and other sort of more complex interactions will work correctly as we sort of move through different options. What that's done, right, is it added a different script down here called a direct interactor. And some of this should look familiar. If you look at your Ray interactor over here, this is the one that's disabled. We had audio events, haptic events, interactor events, right? And if you click on the direct interactor, you have audio events, haptic events, interactor events, right? So this is very similar. Those interactors, when I said like, I put on the materials and had it hover when you like touched an object, right? And then it would change color. This is where you would set those same things in the same way. So in that sense, it's really nice. They parallel to each other really really well between using the ray and the direct grab. The other thing that's really interesting is you notice it has a sphere collider on it. So let's take a look at this and why that's important. Okay, so it's like inside. I'm actually kind of stuck inside this this cube here. Back up just a little bit. Just a little bit. I was sort of in my table. But you notice now, if we click on this, there's a sphere collider here, which you may be thinking, yes, right? We want to be able to actually touch something, right? If you watch the physics video, we want to be able to interact with that thing, right? This is what those colliders, it's signaling it's going to have some sort of physics, right? And to be able to interact with something or touch it in a physical sense, like grab an object, then yeah, it probably needs a collider. However, you're probably also thinking, that's weird, because if I want to grab something and I have a collider on, aren't I going to hit it, right? Like it's like in a skin. And I was talking about how your collisions, right, are like, if you look at the cube one, right, this is like the hard shell on the outside of the object. However, colliders serve two purposes in Unity. The first is they indicate physics, right? And up until this point, it's been physics and it's serving as like the outside, right? However, if you kind of open this one up, you'll notice something is different, and that is this thing. It says is trigger, and the bool is checked positive. It's checked enabled, which means if enabled, this collider is used for triggering events and is ignored by the physics engine. Okay, so what that means is it is there simply to check and see, are you within an object that can be interacted with, right? Is this little sphere that is here colliding, like touching, an object that can be interacted with? An object like this cube, right, that can be a grab interactable. Does that make sense? And if it is colliding with an object that is grab interactable, and you hit the grab button, then it will fire off and allow you to grab it. So it's not actually there to like create, like you push the cube with your hand and knock it over. That's a different kind of thing that we can set up where you like physically want to like hit things with your hands. This is simply there to check and see if can I pick that thing up? Is that thing an actual grabbable object? Okay, so right now, this cube that I want to be able to grab in VR, right? I just made a primitive and I changed the color on it, but it's not grabbable yet, right? It has the box collider on it, so it has that outside. It is not checked is trigger, which means that it's like that outside is not just checking something. It's not just there to serve as a volume is kind of what it's called, right? Where if it's something enters it, something else happens. These happen in games all the time. Also, if you want to just think about like gaming, it's like you run, like you're running in a game or something, and you enter into like an area and like a cutscene triggers, right? That's what this is. You ran into a trigger and something else happened. Or you go underwater in a game and you go underwater and like the audio ducks out and it gets like kind of muffled, right? That's a trigger. You've gone into water. It is just simply there. You entered into a volume, a big box that is like the ocean or lake. And being in that thing is causing the audio to do something. And when you leave, you hear like a splash and then you're out and the audio is back to being whatever it is. That's all it is. It's just, big boxes that you're kind of playing in. But this one is not checked. So this would actually be a physical object, right? That's what it would be. And you could interact with it in that way. However, it doesn't have the grab interactable script on it. So we need to add that. So let's type in, you go to add component, XR, and you can see all your different things here. And you can simply click grab interactable. You could also just search like grab like that. In the future, we'll have different kits installed, and in the Oculus integration interaction kit that we'll definitely look at because you can do hand tracking and stuff, which is super cool. They have like scripts too that are called like grab something. So it gets kind of confusing when you have multiple SDKs installed. So you'll type in grab and it's like, do you want this grab? Do you want this kit's grab? Do you want this thing's grab? So you just want to start to kind of like compartmentalize, right? This one for the XR origin, XR interaction toolkit, XR grab interactable. Okay. And they did a nice job naming convention wise. It's always XR something. So let's just click and add that. Notice what happened. They put a rigid body on it. It ticked gravity. It's going to have gravity. And it's got all of this stuff, the same sort of thing here. Has an attached transform where we could, where do you want it to attach to, just like we did in the previous video. And that's it. Cool. So let's check it. I'm going to jump into VR and see if I can reach out and just like pick that thing up with my controller. There we go. All right. Play. Aha, I did it. And I'm not sure, this is, hopefully you can see me in the camera. It's kind of weird, right? Because if you're just watching this on Zoom, it sort of looks like I just used the Ray interactor, but it's totally different. Like this is my hand, right? It feels much more immediate, like physical almost. Like it's, you feel like you're interacting with the world in a more, I don't want to say like natural way, but it's definitely, it feels more intuitive in a sense. It's less, in a way, like less magical, I guess, though VR in itself is kind of intrinsically magical, just like you're doing crazy things, right? But this can be really helpful, especially if you're looking ahead to definitely the first assignment I'm going to give you if you're in 460 that uses your quests and VR and Unity is the task of making like a game or something, right? So making some sort of like ring game, or you're throwing stuff, you're trying to like get a sphere to land in an area or something like that. That's what I'm going to ask you to do. So I'm going to show you how to do that now in this little in this like quick video here. Just like a quick, fast and dirty version of like a little game that you can do using this this kind of idea, right? So you can follow along. This is in the homework. I'll put in a little blurb like, hey, you saw this in the video kind of thing, as an idea of like where you can take this, fairly simple interaction. So let's say I want to make a really quick like game where I throw a little ball into a square kind of hoop, right? Only using primitives, right? So we're just using primitives here. So I'm going to take this little cube. And I want to make like drawing this down. I don't know, you can't see this, but I'm going to make kind of like a square with a hollow middle, like a hoop almost. Now you may be thinking like, oh, how do you make this cube hollow, right? And the answer is you can't. You can't just like delete a face of the cube if it's a primitive. On your assignment, if you're watching this in conjunction with those assignments, I will mention an app called ProBuilder. And ProBuilder is super cool. I'll make a separate video just showing you how to deal with that and install it and stuff. It allows you to do exactly that. You could delete faces or stretch things and deform objects and things like that. But if we're using simply just primitives in Unity, you actually can't do anything to this innately. It's just a cube. Okay, so I'm gonna make a little hoop here. I'm just duplicating these, and then I'm gonna rotate this one 90 degrees. Something I did there, I always mess this up. I don't know why, like rotations in 3D space make me crazy, but I'll go and start rotating it, right? And I make sure, oh, right, I'm rotating on the Y axis. And then I want to set it to 90, obviously. It's just like a right angle. It doesn't have to be off or anything. And then just put this in the right spot, like that. This does not need to be art. No need to fuss with this too much. And then we'll duplicate this again. And there you go. That's a hoop. I mean, sort of, right? And this is fine. These have physics, right? In the sense that the box colliders on them. They don't have a rigid body, so it's not like this hoop is going to fall like on the ground. Um, but they do have the ability to, if I throw a ball onto this and it doesn't get in here, it'll like hit off and sort of roll off of the hoop, right? This looks really kind of messy here. So let's do a real quick organization thing, which is I'm going to create an empty game object here. And I can't remember at this point in the class if we've talked about empties or not. If we haven't, that's okay. Here's what an empty game object is. Putting this at 0, 0, 0. An empty game object is a bucket, if you want to think of it like that. It's just a thing to put stuff in Unity. It's based on the principle that if you want something to be part of your scene, you need to have it attached to something, a game object in the hierarchy. They're cool because you can use them to organize your hierarchy. So for instance, I was like, I want to clean this up. I'm going to call this hoop. And now I'm going to take my hoop and I'm just going to child it to this like that. So now my hoop is this thing, right? And you can clean your hierarchy up a little bit. This isn't ideal because there's like some kind of weird offsetting happening. If you realize like this is where the game object is set up and this is where the hoop is. We'll talk about like optimizing that later. So this video is not 45 minutes long, and how you would do that process. But for now, you can see like the benefit of this, right, is that it just looks cleaner. It's easier to see. It's easier to manipulate. Okay, so there's our little hoop. Now we need a ball. So let's make a 3D object a sphere. I'm going to reset this again, so I know where it is. Just putting it here, here. Make this a little bit smaller. And then I'm gonna put this cube material on it. Oops. Put this cube material on it and remove that one. Don't mind me. We'll talk about that more in class. Blah blah blah. It's red now. This is just so you can see it. That's not trying to be coy or like sneaky or anything like that. So now we can see the ball, and the only thing we have left to do is make this grabbable, right? We can do that, and that's it. Okay, so now theoretically, I should be able to throw this ball. See how good I am at this game. And as long as it's can fit through that hole, which it looks like it should be fine, I can play my little game, right? This is the part where I always embarrass myself. I'll make these games to show this is like a fast demo, and then I just am abysmal at every VR game. So hopefully this is not so bad. So I'll throw it on and kind of show you how that works. Alrighty. You can do this. Believe in myself. Okay. Okay. Reaching out, and I'm awesome. Okay. I did it. There we go, right? I've created fire. That's it, right? Your assignment, obviously, I want you to be a little bit more creative than that. And there'll be some more layers to it that I'll start talking to you about and kind of throwing different things at you. But that's the basic principle, right? Made a thing, can grab, can interact with, threw it, hit this thing. You saw it hit, right? This thing had a collider on it. These all do. The sphere has a collider on it. And therefore it hit and rolled and went through until it hit a spot where there was no collider, which is the middle. And that's basketball in a very general sense. Okay, that's previewing what you're going to do on your assignment, and obviously a little bit more thoughtful manner. But to recap kind of what we did in this video, I went through and took the default XR origin, your player, disabled these, which you can also delete, because in this instance, we don't necessarily want the ray interactor, and then added two custom components, which are these XR controller device-based direct interactors. And that allows you to reach out and actually grab the thing that you're touching. And the reason that works, right, is because it has the sphere collider on the actual hand, on your hand, that is checking to see, hey, when you touch an object, is this thing on it, right? And if it can see this script, then you can grab it. If it can't see that script, you can't grab it. And that's all it is. That's what's happening. So yeah, I think that's it for this video. Obviously, let me know if you have questions. And like I've said in the previous ones, like there are tons and tons of resources for this. The internet is your friend. I'm not doing that to be like dismissive and saying like, go look it up. Don't ask me questions, but be curious, right? Go out and look. Um, if you have questions or you want me to explain something more, or you're like, hey, what are some resources I can check for this? I'll absolutely provide them, and I'll be doing that unprompted as well, obviously. But don't feel like if I didn't show you how to do it, you can't do it. Okay, I feel like, hey, that was neat. I wonder if I could do X. Probably, right? And then keep pushing and grinding. That's how you're going to learn a lot. Think of these videos in the class merely as just kind of tipping the door open. Like, okay, what is in there? And then push and do what you find to be really interesting. Okay, cool. Those are direct interactors. Let me know if you have questions, and I'll see you later.